I'm going to call this council meeting of June 13th, 2023 together. We're going to start by reciting the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Motion to approve the minutes for the May 25th budget meeting. Second. All in favor? And we're going to skip over staff reports right now, so we don't have to tie up our staff any longer. They've all worked today, so let's just go right into the budget discussions. All business discussions of 2024 fiscal year general budget and grant budget. I know we had a lot of discussions last month. Is there any changes, anything we want to bring up? So
But yeah, Mr. Platt, if you'd like, we can start if it's okay with you guys to just review the proposed changes that you guys proposed, and we can summarize that for you to just kind of give you a summary of where the new budget and balance that is.
And where is that?
Okay, keep going. It's behind that.
Okay.
It looks like this.
Okay.
Okay, so if you look at that, even you look to the expenses side, you can see we added 63,000 for goodwill. And that's coming from the ARPA money. The goodwill contribution was increased by 15,000. The historical society contribution was increased by 10,000. We put in 30,000 for equipment for the projector and light for here, which is kind of a shot in the dark. Based, I think initially you said 52, and so
I'm still working on it. You're still working on it. Okay, well, that's at least a good chunk of it.
Okay, yep, and then the tree commission, after we had the meeting the last time, I had spoken to the tree commission, approached me, they indicated that there were some additional expenses that at the time I had this meeting that I was not aware of, so we basically spoke about it, and so I've added 5,000 to the tree commission budget, but I will say this, we'll monitor that to be sure that the funds are spent, reasonably and in accordance with kind of what we discussed at the last council meeting. The other thing I added based on your increase in revenues is, which was not part of the discussion from you folks, and this was something we had in our original budget. When I say our original budget, when I met with staff, and including the police chief and all the departments, we had a request from the chief for some building renovation for some carpet and paint, the carpet in particularly in the community room. So I had taken that out of the budget we proposed to you, but because you've identified new funds, we threw that 25,000 back into the budget. So as you can see, the expenses are 158,000. And then your revenues based on, again, the 63,000 for the ARPA carry forward, and then the revenues that you very much increased as you roll through that. So that puts us at 167,000. So you can see, there's a difference of $9,000 in terms of revenue and expenses. Increased revenues and expenses.
I just wanted to clarify the comment below then. The added revenue was actually $9,000 more, not the 19.
Or 19, right?
Just so that I understand, we added 158 in expenses and 167 in revenue. So it looks to me like that's 9,000.
It is 9,000.
Okay,
That's correct.
I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, no, that's what I should do.
That makes sense.
Yep.
177, right? I'm just doing math in my head here, but
What's the,
should revenue add this 177?
the expenses should be a total of 148,000.
Yeah, that's a typo. Under
Instead of the 150.
increase in expenses was 140. So it's back to added revenue of 19,000.
Okay. Yes.
Because expenses were 148, 148. Oh,
I just wanted a point of clarification for one of the constituents reached out to me, saying that, we were tapping into the city reserves by us spending some of this money, and I just wanted to, my initial thought was that that wasn't the case, I just wanted to confirm with the P.
Can you specify what you mean by city reserves?
So just, I got an, approach from a resident just saying that, just these funds were using the city reserves, and I wasn't aware of that. It was basically the revenue that we saw from the actual budget, the current year projected for next year. So I was just, that was my assumption, and I think everybody else's, but
If I can take a shot at that, I think you're talking about the ARPA funds. Because that's our reserves, right?
We carry funds over, we did carry funds into balance.
Again, on the revenue side, there are two lines. One is unrestricted reserve, one is restricted reserve.
and I just want to confirm when none of those are being impacted by this
Yes, out of
change as well.
those, we had originally amount for unrestricted carry forward that we were using to balance the budget, and that got lowered by 19,000, the difference between these changes. So it is now unreserved fund cap balance carry forward on the second to the last page, now $320,407.
And do you mind just telling me what it was in the prior, you said it was 19,000 more, is that?
Yes. You mean from the last meeting?
Yeah.
It was 339,407.
It's just not clear to me why it would be 9,000 less instead of more, because this seems like there's more revenues that were realized than expenses. So why would the amount be lower by 9? Sorry.
Because we don't need to use as much. We now have 19,000 more in revenue to
Oh, I
balance.
see, gotcha, thank you, okay. Opposite of what,
Yeah.
what I heard, thank you.
And the 63,000 from the ARPA funds for the equipment for the fire company, Mr. David brought that forward last
Hmm.
time.
Okay.
All right, there's some breathing apparatus, is that correct? Mr. David?
That is.
That would be all for me.
Sir. Councilor Slaughter.
I'm sorry that I didn't find this, because I haven't really had time to go through and pull it all together. This was buried behind some other things in the packet. I guess I will say that there have been some questions about the ARPA money. And we had, as I recall, roughly 2 million that we were holding, and Mr. Day suggested to use the 60,000 for the breathing apparatus for the fire department. Of which I completely agree, we need to protect our firefighters. The rest I had suggested that we retain until we know how much we're going to have to pay towards the flood protection recommended by the National Resources Conservation Program that we've just been accepted into. And that, they explained last time, doesn't really show up on the balance sheet because it's special money or something.
No, actually, the 2.9 million ended up coming in, actually was received and booked as a liability. And when the auditor is finished and does adjustment, they're going to show that revenue totally in fiscal year 2022, because that's when we actually received it. We were holding it as a liability because we weren't sure what kind of revenue at that time when we received it what we were allowed to spend it on, so we weren't counting it as revenue because we didn't know if it ends up getting spent on a project later on, that's when you count it as revenue. So it was just confusing, so we held it as a liability, but the auditor has already discussed with me that he was gonna show it as a fiscal year 22 revenue entirely.
And then
And
just
he'll make
carry
an adjustment,
forward.
yes, and it'll be your balance carried forward.
And of course, now we've been told there are no restrictions on how that money will be spent and no deadline for when it has to be spent. Is that correct?
That's what we understand from where, yeah.
And in fact, why don't we just address the question that Mr. Sabaka had and Mr. Sells had before the meeting, which was why do we show a zero balance in the ARPA line item, which is because we moved it into basically the general fund. Or you want to expound on that?
It's not really on the report that the treasurer's report, that's actually a cash account in the bank.
Right.
So that money, ARPA, was being shared in a cash account that also held other funds. Right. So we needed to use that, and the lawyer said, now that we've been approved for everything, we can move it into the general fund and just have it be part of our carry forward. So we moved it into the retention money market because it earns even more interest in that account going forward.
Can I go back? Mr. President, while we are talking about ARPA, and it doesn't have to happen right now, but could you guys later just tell me out of 2.9 for this fiscal year, how much are we allocating with all the things that we already have, just to know what the balance ends up being later on this side?
That's in the revenue side, under the same page, right above the unreserved fund balance carried forward, that's restricted fund balance carried forward. So it's $343,000 of ARPA funds that are being used to balance the budget in just this fiscal year.
So we should have about little over 2.5 then.
Well, no, because
No,
there
you
was
have about- you have about
700,000.
Okay, but if I may.
Yeah, if I-
Okay, I'll enumerate. So we initially asked for 270,000 to buy a garbage truck. I think I told you that the budget meeting that went up, it's 289,176. And this was with the last council. So you had 350,000 that was approved for future police vehicle payments. What we're using this year is over a 5-year period. Garbage truck compact insert for a small truck, we had estimated that to be 20,000, it's actually 13,880. The police station security cameras were 65. The design plans for the bulletproof barrier storefront enclosure for the city office at 220 Delaware is actually 29,975. That was revised from 20,800. We recently received. In fact, Mr. Day, I think you had asked at the last council meeting where we were with that, and that was an updated quote. And then the cost to totally redesign the downtown office is 48,405, which was revised from 46,100. Okay, in this fiscal budget that we're proposing right now, you have a dog park of 20,000, a mobile stage of 75,000, Chestnut Street Mill and Overlay, 65,000, your tourism director, 50,000. Of course, that was committed to some time ago, but it's actually not being actually spent until this fiscal budget. And then the additional goodwill money of 63,000. So I basically show you at 273 from ARPA funds for this fiscal budget, which would give you a total of $1,061,436 in ARPA money spent, leaving you a balance of $1,838,206. If you do the math, it's going to be off by 11,400 because that included our initial legal expenses when we first started to work on how to deal with getting this money. So, Mr. Sabaka, to your question,
Thank you very much.
$1,838,206.
Just Martel, just clarification, you said the 46,000 was to redo Delaware Street, and I thought that was just for the study.
Oh, I'm sorry, it is a
Design.
No, it's a design, right? Yeah, my
Design,
bad. Yeah.
right.
Okay,
Sorry.
no.
So that could be another 100,000.
Right, correct.
150 piece.
And could I ask you to repeat the amount for the security cameras for?
65,000, and those have already been purchased.
Okay.
That's actually the garbage truck.
Thank you, guys. That will be all from ARPA for me.
Commissioner Senator,
I don't have anything else. Thank you.
persons else. And the only thing I have is, and I'm really concerned about spending $63,000 for fire department. I come from a family of firemen. I was probably one of the last tailboard guys out there. And I don't know if we're going to open up a slippery slope. I'm not saying these guys shouldn't have the equipment. You know, they just spent $2 million on their truck. They grant, a lot of things are happening, and I understand that, but is this something that should be a gradual increase, or should it be all at once? Or this next year, are they going to hit us for turnout, or are they going to hit us for new tires for the truck? I mean, to me, it's just a lot of money to throw at this. We have never, ever spent this much money to the Goodwill Fire Department. And the other thing is, we don't even know what their runs are in the city. They not only, you know, I understand people may not know this, but there's always a mutual response. It's just not Goodwill rolling out. It's Goodwill, it's Wilmington Manor, it's Maidendale. Everybody works together. I fully understand that. But you know, how much money of the city money is rolling out of town? And that's just my only concern. I don't know if we should give them half at this time, half down the road.
But if they need to purchase the equipment, they need it for everybody. They can't purchase half now and leave half the guys unprotected.
Right, well, the other thing that scares me is I talked to Chief Mayeski and they took a grant from FEMA. And evidently, I'm going to ballpark number because I did not write down when I was talking to Chief. It was supposed to be, say, $8,500 for a set of equipment, and it came out to whatever, you know, let's say times 10. And then FEMA said, well, this equipment's only worth $2,000. Now I understand the government's doing that. So where's the accounting? What if they come back and say, well, FEMA says now it's only worth $1,000? Do we throw the extra money? Like I said, I'm not trying to take anything away from these guys. I want it to be discussed pretty openly as far as this goes. This was thrown in at the last minute, at the last budget meeting. And I've talked to people walking around and they're just as confused as anybody else. Because like I said, we've never spent this much money.
Well, it seems to me that this is kind of a one-stop thing to buy some protective equipment that they don't currently have, or what they have is outdated. I'm not sure which it is. It's not into their ongoing sort of general revenue fund as our normal annual contribution is. Is that correct?
If you want me to speak on it, I'm happy to speak on it. Yes, that is correct. And yes, you get about 15 years out of a self-contained breathing apparatus. It is a rather large expenditure for any fire company. And I'll go back and say, as I did before, it isn't one against the other, but we're spending 1.4 million in police salaries alone. That's just salaries. That's not equipment. That's not cars. The fire department is part of our public safety team. We don't subtract when the police go out and help Delaware State Police or the county police. We all know everybody covers for everybody. That the fire department is no different. And when there's a fire in town, this same fire company gets help from every fire company in the surrounding area. So they're asking for the 63,000 because it was a shortfall. I don't expect them to come every year to ask for the 63,000. But as I said at the last meeting, I would expect every year that we're going to have to continue to contribute more, because you know, as much as everybody likes to think there's volunteers and there's plenty of people to do fundraising, there just isn't in any fire company in Newcastle County.
And Ms. Day, I agree with that, but the difference between the police and the fire department is the police are city employees. Fire department is.
Well, thank God they're not, because then we'd be talking probably another $4 million budget.
I won't argue that. I totally agree with that. I'm just saying, usually they won't come at us again, but the bunker gear is going to start going downhill and so forth. So it could be an ongoing thing. That's
It may.
my concern. So why not, okay, here's my thought. Why not raise taxes a little bit to offset some of this? And then that way we're preparing for the future.
Well, if you want to propose that, that's up to you. I think it's a modest request after we have 2.8 million in ARPA funds to push 63,000 of it down to the fire department.
Could I make a suggestion? If we go ahead and authorize this money now, it's kind of late to start talking about a tax increase when we only have 2 weeks before the budget has to be completed. We could revisit this in January when we do our mid-year budget review. We'll have a clearer sense of where things are going. And if we want to start talking about tax increases, that would give us more time to do it in a thoughtful manner.
That's fair. And like I said, because we're going to end up funding, you said it, we're going to end up funding one way or the other.
Okay, I just wanted to say something about that, that's okay.
Yeah.
I think same, to Mr. Day's comment, I think just like policemen, I think they are our line of defense. If our house is burning, God forbid, they will come.
I'm not arguing.
No, I know you're not arguing with that. You come from that family, as you just mentioned. So I think it is our duty to find that money, whether it's ARPA funds or any other ways that we can realize here, but we are lucky right now that we are able to set the money aside for this particular cause, because I'm seeing cost already that was funded out of ARPA funds that, you know, was for first responders, and I think this just goes down that same justification in my, you know, in my kind of head. So I just wanted to
Fair enough.
say that.
I have no other comments. Motion to approve the budget is, or I think we have the resolution. The resolution. Is it written as a Martell?
You have the resolution.
I'm going to take the number.
Mr. Bartel, would that include the 63,000 as, okay,
Yes. It includes it includes everything we just discussed.
Yeah, the resolution doesn't have a number in it yet.
Right, you're gonna need to agree to that number. So if you look at the resolution, third whereas down, you'll say the balance is, the budget is balanced at the 5,704,507.
The general fund.
Right.
Is that old business number one?
Yeah.
Everybody on? Oh, she there?
Yeah, so in the
Oh,
general,
yeah.
and the
Why don't
grant,
you- Yeah, well, why don't you give them those numbers?
the general fund is down at 5,704,507. And the grant fund is balanced at 3,664,350.
Can I have those numbers again, please?
General fund, 5,704,507. And grants is 3,664,354. And I believe there's a line with the total. That total will be 9,368,861.
Tax rate.
Tax rate.
1.2.
Right.
100.
Right.
Just make sure I have the numbers right. General funds are 5,704,507.
That's right.
And general or grant budget is 3,664,354. And the total budget is 9,368,361.
800.
861. Okay.
And the tax rate is set at 1.2.
1.2.
and then zero tax rate.
That's correct. All right, do I have a motion to read resolution 2023-19?
Second.
A resolution to set the 2024 fiscal year tax rate adopted budget or adopted 2024 fiscal year general fund and grant budget, whereas the city administrator has presented and proposed a fiscal year 2024 general fund and grant budget to city council members, the mayor, and the city treasurer, and whereas the mayor. Can I ask a question before we read this? The mayor instructions we have.
I would just use city council.
Okay, and do I need a resolution to change that?
Just read it as, the way you read it will be the way it was written.
Okay,
Right, so just leave it.
Whereas the city council members have advertised and held public meetings to discuss, make appropriate changes to the proposed budget, and whereas the fiscal year 2024 general budget is a balance of $5,704,507 and contains proposed wage adjustments for city employees. Whereas the fiscal year 2024 grant budget is a balance of $3,664,354. And whereas the general budget and the grant budget are to be managed by the city administrator. Now therefore, let it be resolved that fiscal year 2024 total city budget adopted $9,368,861. And resulting in a tax rate shall be set at 1.2 per hundred of assessed value, reflecting a 0% tax increase from the current fiscal year to the new fiscal years commencing on July 1st, 2023. All in favor of the resolution?
Aye.
Ayes have it. If the state. If you ladies like to stay for the entire meeting, you're more than welcome. If not, you're, after Miss Carlin gets hurt.
But this resolution says pass this 25th day of May. I think it's the 13th.
Okay,
Well, they're not signing, that's not the original, they're not gonna sign. They're just-
Oh.
You're the one who signed it.
back into the regular meeting now, staff reports, treasurer report.
It's a thing again, you know. This is the unaudited, treasury report as of May 31st, 2023. Unrestricted funds, $9,242,884.30. Total restricted funds is $2,005,382.87. Total in the cash account, $11,249,167.90. I think we properly answered the question why the ARPA fund has zero balance. If we get it up into the unmarked percent area, and there's a difference between the last period and the 2 million that was due because of interest of $12,000 that we were.
Any questions for the treasurer? To accept the treasurer's report is read. Second. All in favor? Aye. Report from the city administrator.
Right. Glad I have basically pretty quick items for council tonight. I do have a railroad update in regard to South Street Railroad crossing, which most of you were on kind of when we were told that the original date for that renovation was supposed to be June 19th. I did receive some communication from Century Engineering that informed me that due to crew availability, the plan repaving of the South Street Railroad crossing is now planned for the week of August 14th, which is kind of also, I heard from Delaware Division of Fish and Wildlife concerning the fishing pier south of Dobbinsville. Quick update, this has been something that has been talked about for many years. In a nutshell, the folks from Fish and Wildlife were, this particular project was on their agenda or on their schedule after a 7th Street project in Wilmington was completed. My understanding is that project is just about completed, and so what I'd like to do is just rekindle that with all of you and let you know that next month the folks from Fish and Wildlife will be here to make a presentation to council so that everybody is on the same page as to what the actual project entails. Like I said, this has been something that's been discussed for many years. And they are in a position now to move forward with it. We did receive an MOA from them. I had passed that on to Mr. Griffiths, and I believe Mr. Walton now has a copy of that MOA, and so we will continue to look at that. Evaluate it for Mr. Live. There are no questions concerning that particular project. I will let council know we did present to the tourism coordinator that you all agreed to hire last month or a couple of weeks ago. We did send a contract to them, to her last Friday, and I'm just waiting to hear back from her. We sent it to her for her review, and I expect to hear something hopefully this.
I have a question about the fishing here,
Sure.
funding for this. Is that part of it? It's from the state law. Thank you.
And yeah, no, great question. And as I said, this has been something that's been talked about, I want to say since 2017 or thereabouts for a very long time. And the funding and all of the, I mean, we need to work out through the MOA exactly what they're going to fund. I mean, so for example, without getting too detailed, there were discussions about who was going to provide the bathroom, that kind of thing. And in our initial discussion, the discussion was that they would fund everything. My understanding now is that that may not be the case with the bathrooms, but again, that's something that will be discussed in a month and can be a part of the MOA, part of the discussions that, you all want to have. Like I said, I don't really want to get too detailed on it because, so we're going to present the whole thing.
I know they'll present that just for my visual when I'm going down to the park next time, just so I can see where they're proposing it. Is it where at the beach where the people are currently fishing off of the dock?
Yes, where the dock, where the parking lot is, right, it's pretty much just, if you go through the parking lot, it's basically right to the right of that, off of the beach.
Okay,
Yeah, that's where they're proposing that for the run. Like I said, for some time.
thank you.
I think I understood that the money for this comes through Fish and Wildlife and it comes from the fees people pay for hunting and fishing licenses, and that money is restricted to things that benefit hunting and fishing and can't be shifted to something else. Is that correct? Okay.
My understanding that the pier can only be used for fishing purposes.
But they can't shift that money. We can't say to the state, well, we don't want that. We'd rather spend that
It's a
money
different
somewhere
bucket of
else.
money. Whole different bucket.
A restricted bucket of money. Okay, that's what I thought, but I wanted to make sure.
Anything else, sir?
That's all I have to, but,
I just have one other question. It appears we have a new staff member, Ms. Johnson.
oh, yes, we do. Yes, so I think I mentioned at the last council meeting, we could get hired,
Yeah.
right.
Right, but she's actually on board
She's actually
now.
on board, yes, thank
How long?
you. Well, hopefully for a long time.
But how long?
It's been, what, a week?
Oh, okay. So she's just getting oriented.
Yes.
Okay, great.
I just had a question. So, just because I was asked about it, so in the newspaper, the notice for solicitation of candidates, was that the same, is it the same as we did before, or has it changed?
Max, you want to address that?
Yeah, it changed just very slightly, Councilman Day. Yeah, I don't remember, I don't have it in front of me. But we addressed the ID requirement, essentially, which is mistake code. Thank you very much. And trying to remember what the other change was. So you had to provide a proof of residency. And I spoke with the packets need to be picked up at town hall. They don't need to be delivered back to town hall, but you have to come to town hall and get your license. Basically, show your license so you can prove it, which is a state law requirement.
So just so I'm clear, so the forms may only be picked up and filed by the person wishing to file for candidacy. There's no change in that.
I don't remember.
That would be.
It was a very loosely internal policy that was, fortunately not. There was a interpretation, I did just the way I would describe it.
Okay, I guess I'll just have a couple comments. After the last council meeting, I'm kind of surprised that there's more restrictions in here. It was very obvious the council didn't want to approve more restrictions, but I also say, are we tracking who comes in and gets a packet?
Absolutely.
And if so, why? And whose information, who's getting that information?
It's the same information that we tracked with everyone else when you ran. You came in, you signed a form, and we're doing the same thing. And that's-
So where does it go though? If I come in and I just
We
pick up
hold,
the package,
what do you mean, it's on a list that we have so that we know, and that's what we did before.
well, what's the purpose of tracking that list? Are you gonna call me if I don't submit?
Well, we have evidence, we're able to document that you came in, you picked up a packet, and that you're the one who picked up the packet. If somebody else came in and they didn't, and then they submitted it. And we also have, now we're able to also show that there's been an ID provided that says this is the person who picked it up. And, this is the form of ID that we've received, and we do have email addresses so that we can contact. I mean, it's really no different than that aspect of it is no different than what we did before.
I just think it's very restrictive and why somebody couldn't have their wife or daughter go and pick up the packet and why it's tracked. But I got my answers. Thank you.
Mr. Depp, I'll jump in on that. This council was enacted on the 25th of May. We had a chance to do a first reading, and I will explain to the public how this system works, because we just went through with the plats. You have a first reading. There's normally no discussion whatsoever. It's a first reading. It puts the ordinance out to the public. Then you have a public hearing. You take input from the public, you put whatever they say, you try to read whatever they say, and then council has its discussion. Then you have an ordinance reading at a council meeting. Now, once that ordinance is put out, it can be adjusted, just like we did with the flats. Mr. Zeltz wanted a deer hunt or deer relocation, that was put in there. Somebody else wanted a playground, that was put in there. So these things can always be amended. The silence in that room was deafening because nobody wanted to discuss it. So since no one discussed it, it fell back on the city administrator and the city attorney, basically. The show an ID is not restricted. Okay, what's restrictive is when Mr. Zeltz and Mr. Robinette says, can you email to me? And an employee says no, but a council person says, can you email to me? And, oh yeah, no problem whatsoever. So was it influence of power? Was it collusion? That's what we're trying to stop. We're trying to teach everyone to have everyone treated the exact same. None of this stuff, I'll email to my friends and not my other friends. And that's exactly what happened. And you can FOIA the information.
Are we talking about personnel issue here? That's what it sounds like.
No.
The other thing is, it was very clear that this council, after the explanation at the last meeting, was willing to do this. They just didn't want to do it in a hurry like you wanted to do. So instead of, going through the process, we just put restrictions in the paper because we didn't vote.
No, we didn't do anything. We dropped it back to the
That's
city
fine.
administrator.
That's
We
fine.
did nothing. We dropped it back to the city administrator.
Okay. I got my answer.
But I
What I was
also,
looking for.
I would like to add, if you allow,
Sure.
that we have not voted for what the change was added later on. We were actually, 4 members were, to Mr. Day's point, saying that we need to do more to accept applications in a broader way. We just weren't ready to do it at that point. So I do want to say that it is disappointing that we provided comment. We did not want to vote on the ordinance because it was not something that we felt like it was the right thing to do at the time. But we did provide, I think every one of us provided comment that we wanted to see something more progressive. Not to say there's lack of, and I think I recommended something we could, when I play soccer and register for county league, you have to provide your, driver's license ID. So I'm not against providing ID, but it can be provided electronically as well. So, and I don't know if that's going to be the way to go forward with it at all. But it was disappointing to see that what we voted against was actually put in, so it's, the notice, days later.
Can I clear a record?
Sure.
There was no vote. There was no vote whatsoever.
No support.
There was no vote. So now it became an administrative process because you failed act. So self-inflicted wound.
So, Mr. President, this council directs this government. And this council did not direct any restrictions.
You did nothing. You did nothing. You left it wide open. You did absolutely.
You should learn
nothing.
how to read the room, that's for sure.
No, you know what? I think the more people are doing, you have to show ID to vote. You have to show ID to go to the doctor's office. If you sign into your IRS account, you need a 12 character password, user ID number, okay? Yes, none of that was set up right now, but it could have been. And nobody chose to do anything. And like I said, we just approved with the flats. We made multiple changes to an ordinance, and then we voted on them that night.
The
And
will
the
of
same,
council was
and the
adopted.
same process could have happened,
The will of council was not followed, obviously.
because the councils voted no will. They did nothing. They did nothing. You did nothing. All you had to do is read the ordinance, and then your will would have been heard. You did nothing.
But to ignore four council.
Nobody was, there was no vote. Nobody was.
I did not say vote, sorry, I did not say vote. To ignore four council people's comments provided that night is a little concerning.
Well, I'd like to address that if I may.
Yeah.
Because what I did was I reached out to our solicitor the next morning, Mr. Zabaka, and I said, what do I do? These people didn't make a decision on anything. What do I do? And he said, okay, here's how the statute reads. Here are the things we can do. We're not going to limit any emailing if that's what, but there was no definitive direction from you guys on anything. And it was like, okay, well, so we made the decision and please chime in because you told me it was the city administrator and I'm sorry, I made a decision that you didn't like. And but the decision was made because you put it back on me and we just tried to fix what we thought needed to be fixed.
So,
Mr. Walton?
I'd like to make sure I understood correctly what you said and perhaps confirm with Mr. Walton. You were told that there was no restriction on email, but you chose to restrict it
We
to
didn't
in
restrict
person.
it.
You said it had to be done in person.
No, what we're saying is the return could be done.
That's not
Explain what-
that's not
explain
what
it
it
if you
said in
would.
the paper.
Explain what you would, please.
Here's the way I saw it, and here's what we did. So I saw it that council did not take action. I knew that there was a dispute as to the receipt of the packets, but without that. And so ultimately, I said, there will be no restriction on having to return that packet by email. So there's no restriction. There cannot be, because that's what was ruled the last time. And I said from there, additional requirements are absent an action of council are on the city administrator to sort of set up. And the state law requires that you be a resident for a period of time and your charter for longer. So having a restriction where you have to show the ID is a reasonable restriction.
Okay,
Did I say that accurately?
Yeah.
but what Mr. Day, you have the paper. Did it not say in the solicitation that it had to be picked up and returned to the office in person?
No, no.
It says forms may only be picked up and filed by the person wishing to file for candidacy. At the time of filing, the candidate must provide proof of residency.
So it doesn't eliminate email, does it?
And it was very similar to what the other declaration, which was what created confusion. It had to be delivered to 220 Delaware Street.
And I will say, one of the things that you guys said is we wanted to spend some more time. We only have one election, so we want to do it. So it's council, give me direction on
Okay,
how
well,
you want to do
in
it.
that vein, I have a question because I've started thinking about how we might want to rewrite this, because I agree that what's in there is very vague and we need to work on it. I just didn't think we should press it in and do it in a few weeks. I thought we needed to give more attention to it. So in terms of verifying both identity and residence, is a person's name and address on a voter registration list constitute proof of identity and residence?
Residency is an undefined term.
Right, but the voter registration has an address,
As an address.
but
Correct.
then your driver's license has an address.
Correct.
So if you're accepting a driver's license with the address as proof of residence, would you not also accept the voter registration list with an address in the city of Newcastle, obviously, as proof of residence?
So can we address the answer is probably. I haven't thought through it, but yes, probably. Here's the issue. You have to have residency for a longer period of time. Or to run for council, then you have to vote. So in other words, to establish that residency, I would say no
But the driver's license doesn't show how
That-
long you
you're
lived
right.
there either.
That's correct. But that's just,
So what proves how long you have lived here?
that's always difficult and how much you research.
I mean, are you going to accept an affirmation under penalty of perjury?
I can kind of address it. I don't want to really address it too specifically because we've had it, and we've had it, and I don't want to get into any of the people that have already registered. I'm not going to go.
So.
Can I jump in, Mr. Walt, real quick? I'm looking at my driver's license and it says date issued. 6/27/22. So we need a,
You
maybe.
can
a
change
bit
your
here.
address on your driver's license.
And
that
any
doesn't
time,
change
okay, that's fair. Now, I'm just asking the question.
So we had we had an issue in another jurisdiction, and I'll tell you what it was. Somebody came and they changed their license, right? And they said, this is my resident. And the house was vacant. And so the house was vacant. They used that as their address in order to run for council. This did not happen in Newcastle, it happened somewhere else. So in that instance, to prove the residency, they went and they checked the water usage and found out that there were 4 gallons of water that entire year from that particular house. And so they weren't actually a resident. So there's a number of factors.
Okay, so we're going to do that for all candidates?
I'm not saying we do that. I give you that as an example of.
I understand, but I mean, it's at some point. How do you prove how long you have been someplace? Because my understanding is if you move and you go to DMV and change your address on your driver's license, they don't change the issue date because it doesn't change the expiration date of your driver's license. So there's no way of knowing whether that license that
Right.
you hold up was revised yesterday or 2 years ago.
I said you're correct.
I guess the point is, how far do we go with this?
Understood, and I think that's what I'm going to, look, clearly this is an issue. I think that's something that as you guys give me guidance on for what you want going forward, I'm happy to write it in, sort of vet it out. This happened as I came after the incident happened the last time. I'm trying to help out the best way I can here, so being new to it. So what you guys give me guidance, we'll draw it up and we can do it.
But one more question, is an affirmation as part of the application process? I affirm that I am at least whatever the age limit is, 18 or 21 years of age, that I have lived in the city of Newcastle for 2 years, that I'm a citizen of the United States, but that I've never been convicted of a felony, whatever the other requirements are for holding office in the state of Delaware. Is that affirmation with perhaps the verification of either a driver's license confirming the address or the voter registration, is that sufficient?
Put me on the spot, but I do believe so.
Okay.
And that would be challengeable by, let's say, someone else who ran for the office to a proceeding with the Board of Elections if there was a challenge.
I mean, we need some guidance to start writing this.
Understood. And I was not prepared for that tonight. No.
Okay, sorry. Don't mean to put you on the spot, just trying to.
How many years were we using the old rules?
I don't know exactly. I mean, I can tell you that it goes back when I think when I first went up, that was 30 years ago.
And I guess I really take angst with this because if it was a whole election slate and we were going to get 14 or 20 candidates, I could almost see where you want to do something. But for a mayoral race where we may get 3 or 4 or 5, I think it was certainly slap in the face of council to put further restrictions in the paper and require people to do that.
The only restriction was the driver's license.
But it didn't say driver's license.
Or identification, I'm sorry,
Okay, but for
identification.
example, I could show a US passport, which is excellent proof of identification, but does not include my address. So, that's what I'm saying. Where do we go with it?
Mr. Day, is that all you have on that?
Yep.
Mr. Buck,
No further comments.
Council communication.
Yes, thank you. Mostly, I wanted to address what Mr. Day just did, so I'm just gonna skip that for the sake of time. And I wanted to just thank everybody who was participating in Celebration Day, setting the parade up. It was nice to see people visiting. Thank you guys, everybody who lives here, for offering your home and city to everybody else coming to see and share the jewel that we have in Newcastle. It was nice to see not just the neighbors, but also some of the folks throughout the state and from other states coming in and enjoying a great weekend. Truly, I enjoyed it with my family, so that's all I have.
I'm sorry, I missed it.
I'm sorry, I was asking that question under the city administrator's report. I do have a couple of things for council.
You know something, you're absolutely right. That looks nice. You're right. We still get a chief next.
Oh, yeah.
I have one more question on the solicitation of candidates. In the middle says business hours is from 8:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. But yeah, last date of file says to 5 p.m.
We stay open an extra half hour. To make it convenient for anybody who works. Can't get there. Like we did with you. I'm sorry, we'll get back to point board, Mr. Barthel, the floor is still yours. Chief.
I will try to be brief. I'm going to cut sections down.
Thank you, ladies. Thank you.
Good night.
I did have a little bit to talk about with the House Bill 205 and 206 is we met at the Public Safety Committee this past week. It's supposed to hit the floor Thursday. I just wanted to touch base with you about the details, but I'm gonna be generic. So I don't want to take too much more of the time, but the bills are online. I would ask that you take a look at them. I will summarize this by saying this is significant reform, both the police officers, law enforcement bill of rights, and to the way we function with our council on police training. This is a long process that we're 3 years into this. The reason I'm bringing this to you, if you have to interact with your state legislators, this comes up, you're asked by petition. There's a notion out there that this has been called Cops Bill or something to that effect, that we've had some influence over this. This was collaborative. This was after years of listening to advocates. This was years of listening to a lot of people, and it's incredibly informative. There is this information typically that's floating and typically being pushed by ODS. And I say that because I think it's important that you not get, if you're in some way influenced or some way given information that you're not comfortable with, I would ask that you reach out. Please reach out. There is, it will eventually have some impact on the city. This law is going to require that there's local advisory boards. There's guidance on how to create them. There's guidance on recommended guidance on the makeup. So these are things that we want to start thinking about now. But I would really ask that if you're hearing negative things about this bill that has anything to do with the police influencing it or whatever, I encourage you to reach out. We did this with some of the state legislators, walked them in, showed them our existing process, compared to what it looks like now to what it's going to look like when this bill passes. And those folks that don't know how we operate, walk out of there with their eyes wide open. There was so much misinformation about how we do our business that it's disturbing. It was very disturbing to hear some of the comments at the public safety committee. So, but it was successful. The bill came out of committee and we're very proud of the sponsors that did this ball roll. So anyway, if that becomes the source of the topic, if you have questions, that's why I'm here today. Please feel free to reach out. So I know we talked about separation day. We just to summarize that was successful in our eyes. We had no incidents. We worked very well with goodwill. We're about 3 years into this footprint, 3 years into this way that we do things. I didn't get any complaints. I don't know if council got any complaints, but it seemed to go rather smoothly. I think folks are starting to kind of understand what the footprint looks like and the reason for it. At that, we managed to mix in our nonprofit group that we're working with to hire a clinician. She set up a shop in and around the vendors in the park, set up a pod where we ended up training 50 folks and giving away 50 Narcan kits in about an hour and a half. That's a lot of kids in a little time. So that kind of tells the story. And I know I've recently reported that better with our overdoses and overdose deaths, but we had another one this month. So we're starting to see a little bit of a spike. So the timing of this is you know, it's exactly what we need this help. We are presently investigating the robberies that took place at West Fist in Airport Plaza. One was Friday night while we were setting up the Friday night party, and then the other was this afternoon. We're collecting video as we speak. We're collecting as close evidence as we can, and we're working on that pretty hard. So hopefully we have something to report next meeting. We're investigating assault that took place in Washington Park or Washington Square, I should say. I know that kind of went viral on Facebook, and I'm going to touch on that in a second. Our detectives again are working very hard on that, and they do have some substantial leads that we feel confident we should. There's a stoppability there that I didn't think we had. This was from what we can tell on both assault on an elderly male that left him injured. So it was disturbing. The account of this incident, the video is disturbing, but we're working on that very hard. I want to touch base on a few things that kind of went viral on Facebook over the last month. One of them it was retail theft issues up in Airport Plaza. I, like everybody else, was getting a little frustrated that we were spending some time investigating thefts that were not really, there was no intervention. It almost seemed like, and I said to the store manager, it almost seems like you're giving things away here. I was a little premature with that comment, as I learned that they are implementing a lot of different forward-thinking techniques to at least gather evidence to help prosecute down the road. Ultimately, their concern with intervention is the liability that's associated with any kind of intervention. And unfortunately, the reality of the world we live in right now is if we tackle somebody because they stole a drill and they get hurt, folks they're not connecting the dots there. It's unfortunate, and it's why I think their shrink this past year is $1.6 million. It's something that we should factor in when we have these discussions about how we do this. So I met with them, and one of the things that came up was they're telling me some of the things, the techniques they're implementing to help prevent it, and then to capture. Some of it they don't want public, as I understand. So they create something and the folks that do this for a living and steal things for a living figure out how to get around it. So, but they are actively working. So one of the things that we talked about was making contact with all retail shops in that area, developing that. It's been successful in some other jurisdictions. State police have done that in a few jurisdictions. And just having that network in itself has apparently helped share information and they come up with different forward-thinking ideas to prevent this from happening. And some low-level intervention techniques that may reduce some of it. So we're going to create that network and then talk about different options to work together with that to try to stop this. So ultimately, our goal is to is to not be up there as much as handling this kind of stuff, but it's also to prevent. I mean, the last one we had, somebody literally just walked out with 2 water heaters unmolested. So. We can find a happy medium, and our goal. So, the other part of this that came out was that the pictures that we post are grainy. Facebook is good, it's very good to us as far as releasing information, staying in contact with the public. We do our best to give real-time updates, real-time information, and I think we've been successful with that. But Facebook also has its reputation of the folks that just follow along and just. We call them trolls, right? I'm not going to say, but and they have their comments and their input. Not always, not always accurate, not always fair. But one of them is that these pictures are grainy. Why are we posting if they don't make sense? The reality is that picture may not mean anything to you, but it may mean something to someone. And I tell this story all the time. When I was a detective, we had a robbery. It used to be the subway. I'm trying to cut off. And I had one grainy picture that it looked like he was wearing a white robe, but in fact he was all black. Because the clothing was all black. That's how bad this picture was. But I put it out internally, meaning within the state. And within an hour, I had a phone call and I had a name and I had everything I needed. And then 2 weeks later, we were arrested for a trend. So it may look goofy, but there is strategy behind this. And the thought process is you may not recognize that person, but if it's your brother, if it's your cousin, if it's your neighbor, you may recognize. Or there may be some kind of a link to an MO, to a trend, that another investigator may pick up on. So when you see those kinds of comments, I hope you now recognize that we're not just posting pictures that taking a shot in the dark. We've had a lot of success with folks. And then even if it's through the tip line, if you go to our website, you'll see that there's a tip line. You can log on and you can share anything, or most of them are meant through messaging through Facebook. So, we've had some success with those pictures. So I know that was a hot topic. So that's all I have to share.
Any questions?
What was the House bill that you cited?
205 and 206. 205 is converting the law enforcement officer bill of rights to police officer accountability and due process. And then the other one is those. We're going to convert the council on police training. I think the bill police officers standard.
I have a question for the year-to-date crime statistics. In the 2022 column, is that May also of that prior year, or is it for the whole year of 2022?
In the May year to date.
Yes.
Yeah, that's year to date.
So 2022 column, is that also just for the May for comparison? Okay. Wanted to say there were some alarming numbers if that was the whole year, and then we're already surpassing some of those in May. So thank you. For the crash totals, I see that about 80% of the crash, and I know the numbers is not a large, well, debatable, but 40% is following too close. My question there was, do you know on which streets predominantly that happens when people are getting crashed, where it's following too close?
Yeah, so typically this is one of the few months that's the leading primary contributing factor. It's very rare. Usually it's distracted driving.
Okay.
But following too close, it's a coin flip on 273 Brenttown Road when you're going out, right? Traffic stops, and there's a rear end. So if the driver at fault, I was looking at my cell phone, I was changing the radio, I was whatever, that's distracting. But if there's no explanation given, they say, I just have time to stop, that's the problem. So, and witness information sometimes helps. But that is very rare to have that leading primary.
Yeah, I just wanted to see if it's a pattern of, aggressive driving, because I know in PA they have those white dots on the road, separating kind of. So I just wanted to see if it happens on some streets more than the other, but if this is just kind of isolated thing. And for the inattention, I wanted to ask you, what types of vehicles perpetuate part of it per se? Is it just any vehicles, or is it, I'm trying to see if trucks, have more fatigue, or is it just, is there a pattern, I guess, as well?
Yeah, I don't know that I have a breakdown of what the people are. I could probably take that out of that.
Yeah, that'd be great. Not first right now. And then for the House Bill 205 and 206, I'm looking at 205 right now, and really just increases accountability, really, to the public, to report stuff. Is that more critique bill or the 206? I haven't read 206 yet.
Well,
skimmed through it. I'm just curious why it would be even, controversial.
Yeah,
If it's providing more.
yeah, I mean, so there's an argument that, so what we're comfortable public facing identified in 205, that type of misconduct. Some of the advocates are asking that they want unsubstantiated complaint. That means that if somebody calls in and complains about, makes up a complaint, which happens all the time. And we investigate it and we find that it's been exonerated or unsubstantiated. They want that to be public facing too, arguing that it shows a pattern of conduct. Not recognizing that in the reverse, if I'm going to trial with somebody that I know did 3 robberies, but maybe the first 2 were pled to theft. But if I were to get on the stand and say, well, he's done robberies before, the case would get thrown out before you get on the stand. So there's a lack of understanding here. That doesn't, the idea behind it, in our opinion, is they're trying to create a level of cross-examination, discredit them. And listen, the chief of ODS has said that publicly. His job is to discredit the police, and that's not the relationship that I'm used to, that I grew up with. I've learned more about policing from good public defenders sitting on the stand and being told that I did something wrong than I have in any training I've ever been to. So that the adversarial relationship is incredibly important to this system. And we would never push back against that. But this, to suggest that your job is to discredit us, is not healthy. And we're picturing the first 30 minutes of our cross-examination to be, is it true you were late for work 2 years ago? Is it true that you crashed your car 3 times last year? And then the jury's watching and listening to this. By the time we say, yes, that's the man that I interviewed, they're already questioning our credibility. So that's our fear. I think it's a mudslinging attempt.
Thank you for explaining that. And just, I don't know if this is already known or if they can't even have their position known. Does DOJ weigh on these things at all, or like what is their stand on these two bills?
I think they support the bill from what I can tell. I think I read a comment from Kathy Jennings in the newspapers, you know, kind of giving the sponsors some credit for this, and then the fact that we were part of some of these conversations. So I think she supports it.
Thank you. That's all I can.
Anybody else? All right, Chief, thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Be safe out there. Mr. Patel, anything else? Council communications. Mr. J, you want to start off and everything?
Yep, just a couple of things. So I did attend and participated in the Friday night separation day event. I thought it was nice. I think maybe the attendance might have been down a little bit because of air quality and the threat of bad weather, but it was a nice event. It was well put together. So I wanted to thank everybody that had something to do with that. The city administration, the company that we use, it seemed to go very smooth. Goodwill, the police. And I also obviously attended the parade and the fireworks. And again, I thought, there was an abundance of police presence, DelDOT, and I thought it was very apparent that everybody was working together. So it was nice that, that you provided a safe environment for everybody. So thank you for that. And I just wanted to, I know that the other two ladies left, but I wanted to thank them, the city administrator, for our patience with all the questions and the requests for the regarding the budget. That's it. Thank you.
To what I already had mentioned earlier, not to repeat myself, I want to just thank our first responders for Separation Day activities. It really went smooth from what I could tell as well. And wanted to thank Public Works for, I was just driving yesterday during the heaviest rain because I was picking up and I'm just seeing they're the only ones on the street out there cleaning the all the trash out so the water can drain. So I wanted to thank them. It's a not grateful job to be doing in that horrible environment, but thank you for keeping our our streets clean. And
So, something a little bit different. Last week I asked for a listing of the holidays. You just said that. I thank you. I appreciate that. One thing I want to bring up is, this coming Monday is Juneteenth. And I just want to talk about this a little bit. President Abraham Lincoln issued a preliminary emancipation proclamation on September 22nd, 1862, during the Civil War. It declared that his rebels didn't end the fighting and rejoin the Union. All slaves in the Confederacy would be freed on January 1st, 1863. Unfortunately, even though the Emancipation Proclamation, I'll get that out, into effect, it couldn't be implemented in all places still under the Confederate control. The emancipation became official national policies through the 13th Amendment, which was signed by President Lincoln on February 1st, 1865. The last remaining enslaved people located in the westmost Confederate state of Texas weren't freed until June 19, 1865. Some 2,000 Union troops arrived in Galveston Bay, today known as Juneteenth. So I think we as a community should look potentially as the city to take and have Juneteenth as an actual holiday. I don't know if we can do that for this year, but it's something that we should take into consideration. Again, we're here for freedom, and this is what it's all about.
You want me to address that?
Absolutely.
Okay, so it would be an act of council to decide basically if, and council has never really discussed this topic since it was declared a federal holiday. And so if the council wants to pass a resolution doing so, then we would have to go to the unions. And we would have to open up a union negotiation with each of the unions, the FLP and with the AFSCME folks. pretty much simultaneously, because of course, if we're going to add a holiday, we need to negotiate what we're going to do the other side of that equation. But anyway, so that's how that will work. Is that clear?
Absolutely. So I don't know if there's something with council that we should consider, that we should look into this.
Yeah, I think we should talk to unions first, get a feel from them. I mean, we're in the middle.
Right.
We're in the middle of contracts
Yeah,
too.
right.
We have a police contract coming up.
Well, we have a police contract coming up in, next, well, pretty much January, February, so the end of, a year from now, we'll have a new contract. We're just going into that next fiscal year. Certainly, we can include opening up, the ASME agreement simultaneously. And so you certainly can put that on, you know, we can plan that and then have something hopefully decided by, you may want to start that, you may want to open those contracts right away in terms of what you might do with the holiday, that kind of thing. Can I give some thought to that, or, you know, as to what exactly we think the best way to go? But then, of course, I'm hoping if you guys want to pass a resolution and do that, then we'll just take it to the union.
Because it's always give and take.
I would fully support Councilman Zell proposal for making Juneteenth a city of Newcastle holiday, not only federal holiday, but also state of Delaware
I have
holiday
a
as well.
question for Mr. Walton. Can we do that without that being previously announced on the agenda? Can we pass?
So
it
as I
without
understand,
being-
as I understand it, we were talking about for next year, not this year.
Yeah, it's,
So,
It's kind of late. to do it for-
it's already this,
right,
less than a
so,
week away.
so my suggestion would be to put it on the agenda for a future meeting, have it voted upon at that time.
And then talk to the unions, et cetera.
And if the union's rejected, then
Because of the timing for the renegotiations with unions, I would suggest that we put this on agenda's next meeting if possible, so that we have that. You know, we don't have to wait, and, you know, this doesn't have to be something that we have to vote in June of next year or May, for that to be, act how city council stands on this matter, if that's okay. With the president, go.
anything else? Councilperson,
No, just to echo everyone's thanks to all the people who made Separation Day happen and the people who worked to clean up afterwards.
from my understanding, I got a little bit of mixed reviews, but most of them were very positive. I was out of town for the weekend, so just like I said, I like it with everybody else's thing. Moving to public comments. You can address, there's a sign up book in the center. You come to the center podium, announce who you are, and
Sally that on the resident of the city.
yeah, Sally, I think there's a sign-in sheet there also. Then
You want me to?
you have to sign it, young man.
I'm going to address my question to Council President Platt. What happened internally and leading up to the election for mayor? The election on April 15, 2023. As a concerned citizen, the city is obligated to be transparent as to what transpired.
We normally don't address this, and I think it was just addressed a little bit earlier. My suggestion would be to FOIA the documents that were emailed that day on the 29th. And you can see from there, because there is some controversies, you know. Leary asked for documents to be emailed to her, 2 were emailed out. 1 came back. Later on that day, 2 went out. We know Mrs. Leary was in the office Wednesday before. Why she didn't put the paperwork there, I don't know. We do know Mr. Zeltz, Mr. Robinette were denied chance to have their packets emailed or emailed back. They were told they could be delivered, whatever. There was a couple other things. They were denied that. And like I said, there is an employee involved. She did resign. So that's all I'm gonna say.
Okay,
And like I said, for you, the documentation,
Pardon me?
for you, the documentation.
Okay, all right, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
If I can just add a quick comment. So I was not allowed to get information email, was that I asked if I could do an email or if I could get someone else to pick it up. They said someone else could pick it up. So the next day, I had my neighbor pick it up.
Mr. Dell, that's not what we said at the last meeting. That's not what you said at the last meeting. I listened to you 3 times. And I have emails from Mr. Robinette. Yes, ma'am.
Well, I have a comment, but first I just want to say, with respect to the Goodwill Fire Company, I think we're very lucky to have them. And when I was a trustee at that time, in the trustee committee, which I was on, I no longer is, but I learned something about about Goodwill. And one thing that concerned me was, they sent out the yearly request. And I discovered that a lot of people did not respond to them because they just assumed that their tax Goodwill, and they did not. I mean, you will give something, the trustees give something, but, and I think the state also contributed, but they do need money. Their equipment is very expensive, and also when they go to a fire, I assume it's still the case. That their equipment is badly damaged to the fire, and they have to replace it. And in those days, I think it's about $5,000 for the code and the boots and that kind of thing. So, that's a very expensive thing, and periodically it's that. Anyway, one thing that was meant was are a great thing. I just wanted to ask you, President Platt, because at the last meeting, I had a letter from Tom Fratelli that he had emailed, and we were given to understand that somebody joined by Zoom, they cannot make a comment, but they can send something by 3 o'clock on the day of the meeting, and it will be read out. And I understood you to say that no, that it wouldn't be read out. I believe.
I don't recall ever getting an email from Mr. Tertelli.
Well, he sent it. He sent it.
I'm not down, I'm just saying, I don't recall getting it.
And I, actually, I think I handed a copy to Mr. Barthel. Did you get it?
I don't recall.
Oh, okay, well, I have another copy. I just didn't know whether the members of council got it.
Individually, no, but I do recall you giving something over to Mr. Bartel. I don't know if that was the email or not,
It
or
was.
your email. I'm not sure what it was at the time.
It
but-
was. Well, then what I'll do now is give it to Barthel, and if you would give copies to the council, it was a very well done letter about.
And everybody,
About
check their
the-
box system, or it'll be in their box system.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you. Yeah. Sir.
Rob Miller, East Third Street. Two things. I noticed you have an ordinance that you're gonna read tonight about, either a blinking stop sign at 6 in Delaware or blinking lights off the stop sign.
That's a discussion, and we'll get into that.
Oh, it is.
Yeah, it's nothing about removing the stop signs, it's nothing about new traffic lights, it's just, if I'm correct, it's identifying the stop signs.
Identifying before stop signs are.
Okay.
But it has to do with lights of some kind.
Right, maybe, okay. I don't want to take your 3 minutes, okay, let us discuss it.
I'm all in favor. By the way.
Okay,
I just wanted to point out that some time back, I actually brought up almost verbatim.
it was brought up in previous discussions, yes, it was.
And I believe I was told at the time that the, the Del Dot controls that intersection.
That is correct.
Okay, well then I should just wait to hear your discussion.
Okay, fair enough, sir.
I'm all for that. Yeah, the other thing was, at a recent meeting, I understand that I was not at a recent council meeting, but was an ordinance proposed that did not get a second, that had to do with, you have to correct me up on the correct verbiage here, but it had to do with eliminating multi-unit apartments in the gateway, the downtown gateway project.
Sure.
And all that I heard on that was it did not receive a second.
That seemed to be the point of order of that night.
Excuse me?
That seemed to be the point of order of that night.
Okay, well, at any rate, I just wanted an explanation from the council people who chose not to second that. Why? Anybody? I'm assuming there's a good reason.
We normally don't, but I'll let it go. Yeah.
I'm happy because I spoke to several people after that meeting who asked me the same question, so I'm happy to give my opinion. It's, I want to see a traffic study conducted with all the approved projects already with a projected traffic there so that we have an idea of what the impact's gonna be and do something similar that the developers have done for the last two developments, where we would walk through all the scenarios approved under that current zoning, so we understand what not just multifamily produces when it comes to traffic, top of everything else, but what everything else approved under that zoning would, so that we can have the decision made out as a council based on that. So I would just like to see those different scenarios in front so that we can kind of see what types of traffic would be. For example, like the recent project at Lucas Drive, what we're talking about, warehouse versus, apartment complexes. Yes, the numbers are higher, for example, but it's trucks that are higher in the other example of the warehouse. So I would like to see that, for example, in the downtown gateway, you're talking about hotels still being allowed, you're talking about a restaurant still being allowed. So I would like to see just those things, played out, different numbers, just so I can make my decision. So I think that was the reason why I did not want to vote for eliminating that, because I don't know what the other options left on the table would still,
Except it does make sense.
I'm just saying that's the reason we.
There was no vote. So you didn't vote.
I did not want to take.
There was no vote.
Yeah, because I did not want to take out multifamily.
Count on my 3 minutes.
No.
Okay, I just did not want to vote in, take out multifamily without seeing everything else under that zoning.
But that's how the ordinance, like, I said, the ordinance starts just, class started 6 months ago. And then it came to council came to the planning, the ordinance was never acted upon. We waited for planning to make their recommendations, we had that long hearing, and we made it accessible. That's how I
During my campaigning, I mentioned that I would like to go through these scenarios, right, especially for this particular area. So if we can add the discussion.
The ordinance starts the discussion.
But we have a couple items right now that are not ordinances.
There is.
But I'm in favor of starting a conversation about this, not necessarily just multifamily, just to evaluate what is left under that zoning to see the impact as it relates to this area.
Does not the first reading of the ordinance lead to that discussion?
Yes,
Is that the idea?
first ordinance, public
Yeah,
hearing.
that's the idea.
Right.
Okay. So I still don't get it. All right, and it's all.
Because I know we're getting the 3 minute.
I'm more than happy to discuss, and I'm sure each of the council people have their own ideas why they weren't in favor of that ordinance. That ordinance also took out mixed use out of the downtown gateway, which is exactly what the downtown gateway should be targeting. And multifamily right now in the downtown gateway already requires a special exception from the Board of Adjustment. So there is a separate whole level. So when you take away multifamily out of the downtown gateway, now the level for somebody to go now is to get a rezoning change. So I wasn't in favor of either. I'm in favor of mixed use for the downtown gateway, and I'm in favor of multifamily. Not huge, but they, just like we've seen the one out at Ferry Cutoff, it goes in front of the Board of Adjustment, or citizen board evaluates it and votes on it up or down. So I'm in favor of the way the process works now. That's why I didn't vote for it. That's why I didn't agree to the motion.
It's in on the agenda.
Okay, fair.
So they were trying to be nice to answer your question, but I'm gonna have to tell them to stop because this issue isn't on the agenda. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Stone.
Okay.
Your time's up.
Did I really use for that?
Yeah, I think so. That was like 2 minutes in.
Okay, Mr. Bell, you owe me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next time around.
You all know how I feel about this.
Fair enough, sir.
I was hoping you did.
Fair enough, sir.
All right. I'm giving you the benefit of the doubt.
Valerie Leary, 201 Harmony Street. This is actually probably more directed to you, the council. On the way over tonight, I was stopped by two people. They put the cones along Second Street, both sides, to indicate upcoming no parking because they're repaving everything, which is great. Except that every cone has a different date, like from June 5th, June 30th, or June this, or that. So we don't know if it was, they cover last week, they cover this week, should cover next week. And you need to check those.
You on
need
that
to be
tomorrow,
checked.
Jeff?
And there are some,
First thing. Thank you. You did today?
they just went out today, right?
I know they're supposed to give a handout to every resident, telling them exactly what date they're gonna do, but they got ahead of themselves.
Yeah, because the cones are, okay, well, when am I supposed to do my car? I do want the street repaved, so that was just brought up to me on my way. I believe you're gonna be getting an email from someone about it, but it falls under my fault, so thank you.
Anyone else?
Good evening, Phil Gross, 1301 13th Street. First, I want to address with the separation day. I did hear from a few friends that are in bands and that attended the event. They were a little let down that in past years, there was a nice big stage used for the day. When this year, I think just the bandstand was used. Not sure exactly why we downsized it, but few people were disappointed. Next, as far as the elections, there's no reason at all for anybody to not be able to get into the office to pick up their forms and drop them off. No reason, especially if someone was in there and didn't make the effort to go back before the deadline. So to cry foul, that goes along with everything else, including the last meeting last month that was canceled because the newspaper took it on themselves to misread the notice. Everybody that I know of saw on the city site, first meeting canceled, second meeting still on. And for 4 of us to get to the police station to find that both of them were canceled because the paper took it on themselves to do what they wanted to do. And that's just an example of what goes on in this city. Trustees, someone does something bad, it gets swept under the carpet and they do what they want. And it's gotta stop at some point. Council's gotta take control and reel these special interest people in. As far as the stop sign, I emailed each of you something that I had emailed a while ago. So it's a point of reference of different stop sign additions. That if we're not going to go to getting a free light, that we can put on a blinker or use as a traffic light. This would be the second best thing. Again, getting back to the newspaper. If you compare Miss Councilwoman Souders' notes with the papers, minutes, notes, never the same. She picks and chooses what she's gonna print from the minutes of the meeting. So just like with Delaware City, I've spoken to them, they're gonna see about doing a resolution to not allow minutes from the meetings to be printed in that paper. Because there's no opposing viewpoints, there's no truth in any of the stuff that's printed in there, and it's supposed to be newsworthy, it's supposed to be accurate, it's supposed to be fair and true for everyone. It's not a select few. Thank you.
Hi, Aretha Brown. I just like to make a statement. I'm not sure how to pronounce your name, Andrew.
Zelt.
So, thank you for bringing up about Juneteenth. I don't know whether it will be passed down the line as a holiday, but I'm glad that you brought it up because in the historical city of Newcastle, there really is no African-American event. And this, if it's not brought up as a holiday, at least maybe there will be events in the month of June to for this this holiday, I mean, this day. So thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else? Identify yourself, please, sign in.
I'm Andrew Mack, 23 West Third Street. I actually came, I wasn't aware that like the topic was the light over on Dixon, Delaware, but the new tree blocks the stop sign. I'd really like to get rid of the light, because it doesn't fit in with Old Newcastle. But I also don't want the tree to block the stop sign. But I wasn't aware that this was on tonight, and so that's all I really have. I get 3 minutes, so does anyone have videotape of the drone that was flying over from the drone? Because I'd like to see the fireworks from aerial display.
I think that was done by the police department. I don't think you're gonna get that.
Yeah, we're flying drones up there.
Oh, there's 4.
Yeah. That's all I have.
Put that on your Facebook page, see if somebody will come get it for you. Sure.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Brian Mattaway. I reside at 628 Delaware Street. There are several acknowledgements that I'd like to make in this public body. First, I would like to give a heartfelt welcome of encouragement to the city's new appointed tourism director, city solicitor, and to Ms. Johnson, who left earlier. Second, I would like to thank Newcastle Community Partnership, homeowners, volunteers, vendors, first responders, who deserve a round of thanks for a successful day in Old Newcastle, that occurred at the end of May. I'd like to give a public service announcement. This coming year, 2024, will be and mark the event's centennial celebration, 100 years. There's plenty of room for all residents and friends of our city to play a role in making this event special and like no other. Separation Day was a success. I'd like to thank the city and everyone involved for the one who made it done. I'd like to publicly thank Mr. Barthel, previous council, Mr. Smith, Ms. Leary, the current council, and the trustees of Newcastle Common, Encore, and community partners for working together in an effort that will bring new playground equipment and improve Battery Park this summer. Respectfully, I'd also have 2 requests of our city and hope that it would have the support of all leaders and community members. First, I'd like to ask that we plan and invest in some additional tangible way, i.e. budget, into the various satellite parks throughout the city. Historically, I've seen throughout the budget, it's been about ranging between $2,000 and $8,000 per year. Not sure what that goes towards, but what we do today will make a difference tomorrow for our youth and generations to come. Secondly, there's a jewelry business that is celebrating 140 years of service to this community this year. It is right and it is just for our city to recognize this great accomplishment and commitment that they've shown us. Please consider rendering a proclamation and a goodwill gesture of some sort. Thank you in advance, and I yield my time.
Thank you, Mr. Mattaway. Anyone else? Okay, we'll move forward then. Mr. Zelsley said, some of the stuff is all business, new business, if you want to just kind of discuss what you were trying to get across.
All right. So the first items, I had people who were talking about, when they come in and out of town, going to the municipal building, sometimes getting parking. So I was thinking, and this is just up for discussion and feedback, if we could take 1 or 2 spots designated for 10-minute parking in front of the municipal building. So that when people need to go in and out, most of the time it's quick hits, that people can get in and out without any issues.
We have a comment. We have 2 spots designated for city business. 5-minute parking is totally unenforced. I mean, how do you enforce it? I mean, and I'm not arguing that, and the more complaints I get are guys coming down with tractor or towing trailers or big pickup trucks. And if they're coming into town and there's no place to park and those 2 spots are tied up, that just ties up 2 more spots that people are going to use to go there to go to a restaurant, shopping, everything. I don't know how we do this.
Well, I think, again, police could actually patrol it at the beginning, probably, get a few tickets, if there's some situations, people become aware. But I think that would help, our community for people coming in and out to take care of the business without having any issues.
Mr. Zells, you've said the last couple of meetings, the wolves are at the door, our cops are getting their butts kicked every day. They're out there working their asses off. And I don't know if they're gonna be coming around every 5 minutes to see who's parked there. I mean, that's just my opinion.
Mr. Patel, if you know the number, that would be great. If not, I think it's okay to come back to the next meeting, just because I'm open to entertain this, but I would like to know how many visitors a day we get typically. And what part of the day. I think that would help me kind of understand the need for this, because, and I don't know if the number exists, to be honest. Or it can be something that, from people can estimate, even just give the best kind of knowledge to give us understanding. If it's 20 people, so if it's sporadic throughout a day, then taking 2 spots might be harsh. But if it is, something that we're seeing around noon, let's say at lunchtime, we have, more people or something like that. It will be interesting to know.
You're talking about who are specifically parked in those.
No, who's coming to the building? Like the amount of people coming to the building. Like,
We have 2 spots already.
Right, yeah, okay, I thought you.
no, not just curious how much traffic we get with people coming to the building to begin with, to know that.
And you'd also do foot traffic, like I was in the office today, and you're people walking their dogs.
Yeah,
Something worth looking into.
Just to be clear, that the 2 city spots are for city vehicles, right?
We typically try to not park in those spots. If there's no other spot there, if that's available, park in those spots. The problem, if you will, that we have is that there's nothing on there that it says for official use only, and so that could be perceived as somebody coming in and saying, into the building and whatever. Quite frankly, it's not designated that if you're here for so many hours or whatever, and I'll let the chief. I know you want this question. So basically, unless we have something like this, okay, you'll be taking it after so much time, it's really hard to enforce that. But I will say this, I mean, with all due respect, we don't have, I have not heard a lot of complaints with people not being able to park and come into the building, but I mean, you make a good point, it's certainly something we could look into.
So there's 2 spots, I probably just can't park in those spots. So can we maybe change the, like, on those signs that becomes available for quick hit scenarios?
I actually went to pick up my package there today, and I saw official use only, and I parked the next spot next to it. So maybe changing the sign language would help perhaps, and then see how that resolves. I understand, but I understood it as, city administrator, like not for resident to go in and, fair enough. So I guess.
I will park, okay, so I will park in that spot. It's like I said, I generally try not to.
Fair enough, yeah.
If you drive by there tomorrow and I'm in that spot, I generally try not to.
But no, but next time if the language is different, more encouraging for me to park there, then I would park there. I'll put it that way, yeah.
Second,
The second thing is, I don't have the information from DelDOT on what's happening with that light or when it's coming down. So I don't have additional information, but I'm really concerned about that light. I don't think people actually know the stop signs are there sometimes. That blinking light coming down, I was hoping a couple of things. One, we have signs saying it's under study. I don't know where those signs are today. There's 4 of them on each side, on the opposite side of the streets. Could we put another stop sign there when that light comes down? As well as can we look at a town, because I think DelDOT said they won't give us any money to do anything, but something to blink on the lights, on the stop signs to make them more prominent.
well, it was discussed. Mr. Gross did send something like, I mean, they have like Christmas lights around them that blink.
Yeah, they're kids.
They also, Mr. Gross, they also have, if you go to Fourth in Delaware, Third in Delaware, they put a little red light on top of it that blinks. I mean, there are,
That's great, but that light doesn't work. It's never worked.
Not a light, it's just a thing. that-
no, the one in Fourth Delaware.
One, there's a little red
Oh,
light,
yeah,
Right, the former
on the
mayor.
top.
but it's never worked.
It's normally background upgrades. So I mean, there are options. I mean, all he has to do, all the city administrator has to do is work with DelDOT. They were here last time. They came back with this early things along. I thought it was kind of weak myself.
Yeah, it's really things are not working, especially when there's no wind.
Thank you.
Yeah, so, I mean, I'll make 2 observations because I go through that intersection fairly regularly. The trees do block the stop signs, and maybe that's simply a matter of a little pruning, I don't know. And the spinner thing aren't that obvious. And my memory is that DelDOT said we wanted to put the Christmas tree lights, or whatever you want to call them, around the edge, that we would have to pay for it. But I don't remember any dollar figure being assigned to that, so maybe we want to try to find out how much that costs.
They can't do that expensive. I mean,
I can't expect it, but if they require the batteries to change regularly, that's gonna be the same issue as the blinking light at Fourth and Delaware,
Correct.
Third and Delaware. So I don't know if they have.
One of them are
One was
solar.
solar pack, or I don't know, but that'd be something to look into.
Well, I can tell you that from, I had a, Peter Haig was a couple of weeks ago, and we indicated to do that. At this point, there's no plans in this fiscal year, maybe in the next, to take that light in. They are also still looking at, we made a request for them, and this was actually brought up for many meetings about the paving, what we're gonna do if, what is DelDOT going to do if they don't have to replace the light? And of course, we had officially requested through them that, okay, you don't have to replace the light, work with us on repaving that area, and, hopefully we can then extend further up Delaware Street in conjunction with what they could possibly do for us if they had replaced the light. That being said, I'm under the impression that light's not coming down for some time, and I'm also I'm led to believe, I should say, that they are also considering the repaving aspect of it. As far as these other things that you mentioned, I haven't really spoken to them about them.
We're in control of that.
Chief, can I ask you a question about that intersection? Has there been any accidents on that?
Nothing major to report there.
So nothing that stops on visibility is. Thank you.
Good enough. All right, moving on, your motion to read resolution 2023-20, a resolution to designate 2 trash trucks owned by the city as surplus property and authorizing the disposal of said surplus property. Have a second. Whereas the city of Newcastle owns a 2007 Sterling T8500 trash truck and a 2012 International 000 series trash truck, which are no longer needed. And whereas city council has determined these vehicles represent surplus assets and should be liquidated and disposed of. Now, therefore, it is hereby resolved that the city council does hereby approve the sale and disposal of the following vehicles. 2007 Sterling LT 8500 trash truck, VIN number 2FCHAW DC07AY 57184, 2012 International 7000 series. So there was a little bit of typo in the first part of it, so we can correct that. Serial number of the trash truck is, or the VIN number is 1HTWC AAR 4CJ 425453. Be further resolved that the city administrator shall have the authority to market and sell the vehicles at a public or private sale upon such terms and condition as the city administrator deems appropriate as his sole discretion. Any questions on this? Motion to approve the resolution. All in favor? Aye. Ayes have it. There was a conflict of interest tonight with Mr. Toner scheduled, so he will not be making a presentation. We do have an update from the sea level rise force. House, would they come forward?
Hi.
Thank you.
Thanks for inviting me tonight. My name is Alice Real. I am the chair of the Sea Level Rise Task Force for the city. The task force was created in April of 2022 by the council, given 1 year to research possible ways to protect the city from flooding now and in the future, to find sources of funding for any such solution, and to inform the public what they might do to protect themselves from flooding. Eventually, our mandate was extended 6 months, and we are set to dissolve in October. As part of our research into possible funding, we came upon the Natural Resources Conservation Service of the Department of Agriculture and its watershed protection program. Seeing this might be a place to get the funding we need. So in August of 2022, at the urging of the task force, the city sent a request to the NRCS's office in Dover, asking that a preliminary investigation be conducted to determine the city's eligibility to be in the program and the feasibility of a project to protect the city. In May of this year, we heard from the NRCS that we were in fact eligible. As for feasibility, the firm that did the preliminary investigation suggested a number of possible projects, most likely of which was the raising and extension of the current dike and the building of new ones, essentially new berms, and a floodgate across Delaware Street. In a phone call on May 10th, which included Ms. Souter, Mr. Brett Bell, and Chris Rogers, city planner, our contact at the NRCS in Dover, Ann Baldwin, said that we were indeed going to get support for a flood protection program. The NRCS will contract with firms to do the planning and engineering. And because this has to do with flooding, said Dan, NRCS will pay any construction costs without matching funds from the city. This does not mean the city will have no expenses. There are collateral costs that we cannot determine as yet, although they should not be very burdensome. While the preliminary investigation did suggest some alternatives, the project will be planned with a lot of input from the city, the residents, and other stakeholders. Since the shape of the project is not yet determined, Ann says the NRCS will put a placeholding sum for the project at $37.5 million. The cost of the most likely alternative. The cost could go up or down. The city will likely be asked in the next few months to officially request the project. Activity is set to begin around October, when the NRCS attracted a company to do the planning. Of course, the project itself will take many years to complete, and assures us that once the planning begins, the project will be fully funded despite the length of time. One more thing, the task force mandate ends in October. Ann has suggested that she would like to see it continue as the liaison between her office, the contractors, and the city and residents. Sometime in August, the members will begin discussing how we would like the task force to continue and who is willing to serve on a standing committee. We will be back with you soon after that with the proposal. So if anybody has any questions. Did I mention $37.5 million?
That is such great news.
Okay.
Awesome.
Any questions?
No?
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay.
All right, last item on the agenda is resolution 2023-21, a resolution to approve a handicap parking spot on 172 East Fourth Street in front of house. Motion to read the resolution.
So moved.
Whereas the resident at 172 East Fourth Street, who is disabled under the definition provided in section 172-7 of the city code, has requested that the city install a handicap parking spot in front of their house. Whereas the resident has a driveway, but it's more than 200 feet to get to their front door. And whereas the handicap parking spot will allow the disabled resident to enter the house through the front door of the residency. And whereas section 172-9 of the city code provides that handicap parking spots on public streets may not designate or reserve for disabled residents exclusive uses if said resident has all-street parking available. Whereas city council supports the public policy making reasonable and appropriate accommodation for disabled persons and acknowledge that the public parking on public rights of ways must be evaluated on a case-by-case basis, considering the facts and circumstances affecting the public safety and the communities unique to each case. Now, therefore, it is advised that the city council approves of requesting a disabled resident at 172 East Fourth Street to install a handicap parking spot in front of the resident of said Fourth Street. Handicap parking space shall be generally available for the use of any person deemed prudent to provision section 172-7 of the city code. Any questions?
I didn't have a chance to walk over and look, but from the picture, it appears that the driveway must be in the rear of the house. And there's no the driveway on the picture would belong to the neighboring unit, not to.
I drove by there today, but I didn't want to drive in the back just because I didn't know it's public belongs, or
Okay.
I do know there is an issue and it may be resolving itself. There's quite a few handicap spots there and one is being misused according to some of the residents, but this is much further down the block, so.
Yeah, this is almost down to Chestnut.
Yeah, I drove there today just to, see the situation. And my only question really was whether the two neighbors had, they were in agreement and they were okay with that. Just part of the convenience part there, but doesn't seem really a big issue per se, but.
That's the first time the question is asked. They don't have, I don't think they have an opinion or not. I don't think they do. I don't think they.
I think it's a reasonable accommodation request under ADA.
Yeah.
I don't think we have a whole lot of
Choices.
It's reasonable accommodation request.
Right.
All in favor to approve the handicap parking spot? Aye. Ayes have it. Motion to adjourn, we have a second. Second. All in favor? Aye. Meeting adjourned.